Everyone is obsessed with follower counts, but followers aren't the ones driving modern attention, viewers are. Because social media isn't behaving like social anymore, it's behaving like television. And the brands that are winning today aren't stacking followers, they're building shows. I'm AJ Kumar, author of Guru Inc., and after helping brands turn content into an actual growth engine, and I can tell you this, the algorithm behaves like a TV network. And if you want to win, you can't think like an intern with a calendar. You have to think like a producer. So let me show you why the brands treating social like a network are pulling ahead, and why everyone else is being scrolled past. Chapter 1, the content calendar trap. You've seen this trap before, probably inside your own team. A brand feels behind, so they open a spreadsheet, draw 30 empty boxes, and convince themselves that filling those boxes will create momentum. But all they've actually built is a publishing quota. Because most brands don't create content, they manufacture output. And output has never built a brand. Not in television, not in music, and definitely not in social. You could see the pattern everywhere. They chase trends because silence feels risky. They post randomly because we need something up today. They obsess over consistency because the internet told them that it matters. But consistency without identity isn't consistency, it's just noise. And here's the deeper mechanism underneath all of this. When a brand doesn't know what it stands for, it defaults to what it can measure. Calendar slots, post counts, frequency. It's the illusion of productivity that's replacing the reality of impact. This is why so many brand accounts all look the same. Same sounds, same hooks, same attempt at being relevant. But trend chasing doesn't build memory, it builds dependence. It produces content that fuels the calendar but starves the audience. The platform isn't confused. The audience isn't confused. Only the brand is. Because to the viewer, a random feed isn't consistency. It's a brand with no signature. That's the content calendar trap. It keeps you active, but it never makes you memorable, which is why the brands pulling real attention aren't posting, they're programming. So let's go deeper into this. Chapter 2. Your feed is not a feed, it's a network. Most brands still treat social platforms like bulletin boards. They post, they hope, they repeat. But the platforms stopped behaving like bulletin boards a long time ago. Social is replacing TV consumption. People are not browsing anymore. They're watching, they're tuning in. This is why content that behaves like a random post fades instantly. The system is no longer looking for activity, it's looking for programming. It rewards creators who show up in the same way a TV network shows up, with a format, with structure, with expectations. Brands keep trying to win with isolated posts, but the platforms keep rewarding those who build worlds. A show has recurring settings, familiar faces, a predictable rhythm, a clear identity. The feed now behaves in the same way. It promotes patterns. It promotes a consistency of an experience, not a consistency of output. A brand that understands this becomes easier to watch, easier to recommend, easier to remember. The ones that ignore become more of that account that disappears within hours. Social is not a place to just post, it's a place to program. You're not running a feed, you're running a network. And the moment you see it that way, everything else starts to make sense. Chapter 3. Repetition builds memory. Format builds identity. Every great show works for one reason. People know what they're walking into. There's a reoccurring format, a reoccurring theme, familiar characters, a recognizable set, a predictable length. The moment you see it, you feel at home. That familiarity creates memory, and that memory creates loyalty. What happens when you get 5 friends at the same coffee shop or at the same apartment every week? You get Friends, How I Met Your Mother, Seinfeld. Socials are now working the same way. The algorithm is favoring content that behaves like a show, not a random experiment, not a one-off idea. A show, a repeatable experience that delivers the same feeling every time it appears on the feed. That's why scattered content never builds a recognition. Nothing repeats, nothing anchors, nothing signals to the viewer, here's your world, here's your tone, here's your perspective. Instead, the content becomes a blurry timeline of disconnected ideas, easy to scroll, impossible to remember. But the moment a brand commits to a recurring format, everything tightens. The audience starts predicting what's going to come next. The algorithm understands where that content belongs, and that brand starts building a mental category inside the viewer's mind. Predictability is not boring. Predictability is recognition. Recognition is identity, and identity is the beginning of real attention. This is how memory is built, not through volume, through repetition of the right experience. Chapter 4. What makes a social show a show? A social show is not just content, it's a system that creates an expectation. The same way a TV series carries familiar beats, a social show uses repeating elements to build recognition. The center of any show is a recurring format, a recurring theme, familiar characters, specific sets, consistent length, and predictable delivery. These elements turn individual posts into a world that the viewer can easily step into. And once that world becomes familiar, it becomes bingeable. This becomes the foundation of every winning show on social. People are not responding to randomness, they're responding to a pattern. This is also why expectation setting matters so much. We consume thousands of pieces of content per day. Between 7 hours of screen time and multiple platforms, the viewer has no patience for guesswork. They need to understand what the content is and what they're going to get from it within seconds. A show gives them that clarity. The theme signals value, the set signals the environment, the format signals the experience, and together, these elements create familiarity, which then creates memory. This is the moment where a brand stops producing content and then starts producing something that the audience can return to. Chapter 5. The brands proving this works. If you want to understand the power of a show format, just look at the brands that are already treating social like television. They're not louder, they're not posting more, they're simply telling one story in a world that they designed themselves. Take Built, for example. They're a housing rewards company. Built an entire mockumentary called Roomies. It follows a young woman that's navigating roommates, disappointment, and the absurd reality of apartment hunting. And it almost never mentions the brand. Yet people return to every episode because it feels like the same universe. They watch it like a sitcom. They're not following a brand, they're following a world. Alexis Bitar did something similar with Bitaverse. That's a luxury jewelry label. They're creating a comedic miniseries that spoofs the fashion world. The sets, the pacing, the characters, all consistent, all theatrical, all unmistakably all theirs. Even the tone feels like a satirical wink at high fashion. The jewelry is present, the story is louder. That's why people remember it, because every episode feels like another chapter in the same fashion comedy. Even Tower 28 leaned all the way into storytelling with The Blush Lives of Sensitive Girls. That's a scripted sketch series built around their blush products. They brought in comedy writers, they built sets, they created characters. They treated the product like a prop inside a larger narrative. This is what happens when a brand stops posting and starts producing. The world becomes bigger than the product. And with my social media studio, we build a lot of social shows for our clients. One client, NP Digital, we helped them create not just another marketing podcast, but we built the Marketers Roundtable. It's a structured series where Neil and his team can debate real marketing questions with clarity and authority. One set, one format, one rhythm, multiple experts sharing one table. We modeled it after the Actors Roundtable or Assumptions by Smosh. Each episode delivers the same feeling: competence, insight, collective intelligence. The consistency shapes the identity of the show. The world stays the same, only the conversations evolve. And as you can see that these brands are not just posting content. We also do this with another client named Nikki Haskell. She's 84. We have a show for her about things I know in my 80s that I wish I knew in my 20s. And we could repeat that same model over and over and over again and have variations. Things I know in my 30s, 40s. It could be about relationship advice, career advice, how to be at parties, a variety of different options that we could then build around that format. Chapter 6. How to think in sets and how to choose one. If you study all these shows closely, they're all sharing one thing: a set. A place where the story lives. Built had that chaotic New York apartment. Alexis has an exaggerated fashion studio. Tower 28 has an over-the-top, blush-filled universe. Think about shows from the 90s like Family Matters or Full House, that every time a show starts, you see Chicago or San Francisco. You could look at the Beverly Hills cheese store and you see that the environment is that the cheese shop, and you have all of these different interactions with all these different types of customers and all these different types of cheeses. Any brand that has a physical location can do things like that. Because the set isn't just a decoration, it's part of the identity layer of the show. It tells the viewer what world they've entered before anyone speaks. It gives them context, tone, and an expectation in a single frame. That's why the best sets feel obvious in hindsight. They lock an entire story into place. But choosing a set isn't just about aesthetics, it's about inevitability. A good set does three things. It grounds a story, it reinforces a brand, and it scales. Grounding means the environment matches the emotional truth of the show. Reinforcing it means that the location whispers your brand without saying its name. Scaling means that you can shoot 20, 50, 100 episodes without changing the physics of the world. And one of the clearest examples comes from a client I worked with, Non-Toxic Dad. When we started working on his famous series about This Is Toxic, we didn't just choose grocery stores or the kitchen because they looked good on camera. We chose those sets because that's where real decisions happen. The grocery aisle was not a backdrop. It was a place where parents actually decide what goes into their homes. The kitchen was where parents decided what to cook. His set became the message. This is where your family's health starts. And once the environment clicked, his identity clicked with it. As simple as that. A couple of sets, both inevitable, both instantly recognizable. And ever since then, he stopped being a creator talking about ingredients and became the guide who helps families make better choices in the exact spaces that those choices are made. If this opened your eyes to how shows will shape the 2026 feed, the next video will make the whole system click. Watch The Real Reason Social Media Feels Confusing. It's going to explain the hidden mechanics behind every platform shift and why most creators misread this game.